Hello friends, today we will be doing a CVT fluid and filter change on a 2015 Mitsubishi Mirage. Although the vehicle demonstrated in this video is a 2015 Mirage, this tutorial will be relevant to anyone that uses the JATCO made CVT7 JF015E transmission. A list of said vehicles can be found on Wikipedia. While looking at this list, I found something very funny. There's a Suzuki vehicle called the Hustler, as shown here, that uses this transmission. Not sure how much hustling one can do with a 51 horsepower CVT vehicle, but who knows. We're going to start off by talking about what tools you'll need to do this job. You will need a 21mm socket, breaker bar, torque wrench, jack stands, and wheel chocks to be able to remove the driver's side tire to allow you access to the auxiliary cartridge filter. You'll need a 19mm socket to be able to undo the drain pan bolt to drain the transmission fluid. You'll need a 10mm socket to undo the auxiliary cartridge housing and the pan bolts. Of course, in bold, you will need a special funnel that will allow you to refill the transmission. You need a funnel where the tip of the funnel is able to fit in the dipstick hole. Optional but highly recommended is a 1/4 inch torque wrench to allow you to torque those 10mm bolts back to factory specification. The normal 1/2 inch torque wrench you probably use to put on your wheel lug nuts normally will have a minimum torque setting that is too high for those 10mm bolts. With regards to parts, you will of course need the auxiliary paper cartridge filter, the O-ring for its housing, the metallic pan filter that goes in the pan, a new gasket for the oil pan, and you will need 5 bottles of CVT fluid and a new crush washer for the drain plug. Optionally, like me, you can also pay for a laboratory analysis of your CVT fluid to see the health of your transmission. The reason that we'd want to understand the health of our transmission is because if you're no longer under powertrain warranty and you will have to replace that transmission at a dealership, that transmission brand new is currently worth more than my entire car. So although it's a little bit unethical to say this, if you find out that your transmission is going bad, you should probably try and sell the car. We're going to start off by talking about how to safely jack up the car. Depicted in this photo are the 2 jack points. The front one is the subframe that attaches the 2 lower control arms for the front wheels. I unfortunately am poor and I'm using a very cheap jack that is unable to reach the front subframe from the front of the vehicle because it's very far set back from the front bumper. So I will be jacking the car up one side at a time. It's a little bit of a slow process. Here are the jack points for the vehicle. This is where we're going to set up our jack stands. Do pay attention to set up your jack stands in between the notches as depicted in the photo. Before jacking up the vehicle, be sure to firmly set the e-brake, also referred to as the parking brake. While the car is also on the ground, we will be loosening the lug nuts for the driver's side wheel, as its removal is needed to access the auxiliary transmission filter. Don't forget to chock your rear wheels before you begin jacking the front of the car up. While I do this, I'd like to mention that it's important that you only jack the car up on a relatively flat, relatively safe surface, and that the minimum height that you need to jack your vehicle up to is the point that the front wheels no longer touch the ground, as you will need to remove the front driver's side wheel. I'd also like to briefly mention that if I wasn't on a budget, i.e. broke, I'd much rather be using 4 jack stands instead of 2 and raise the car up so that it is level in the air. This would give me a lot more room to work underneath the vehicle, as I would feel comfortable raising the car up much higher than I am in this video. Also, after jacking the vehicle up, remember to give the vehicle a good push to make sure it's secure, as you see me doing in this video. Now that we feel comfortable getting under our vehicle, we're going to use our 19mm socket and our breaker bar to break open the drain plug. Note that you can see me here filling up the sample for the laboratory analysis. Also note that I'm using a drain pan that is essentially a measuring bucket so that we can know how much fresh new fluid to put back in the transmission. It's not as obvious as you'd think. I'd also like to mention that if I wasn't going to be removing the transmission pan today, that I would remove the vehicle from the jack stands and I would jack the rear of the vehicle up to maximize the amount of fluid I can get out of the transmission, as the transmission drain plug is recessed into the pan. Draining the transmission is nothing like draining the oil. The oil drain plug on this vehicle gets basically all of the oil out of the vehicle. If the vehicle was completely level, removing the transmission pan drain plug would remove 2.64 quarts of fluid, but the transmission holds a total of 7.4 quarts of fluid, so you'd be removing less than half the total volume of fluid. This is because some parts of the transmission, such as the torque converter, similar to an engine oil filter, have an anti-drain back valve that prevents the fluid from going back down to the pan when the car is off. Here in the video, you can now see me change out the drain plug crush washer with the new one I bought from the dealership, and I will reinstall the drain plug as I don't want to forget. As mentioned on screen, the drain plug is tightened with 26 foot-pounds of torque. Now we will begin the removal process of our drain pan. I'm going to start off by loosening all the drain pan bolts a couple of turns. Now we're going to go back and loosen all the bolts a little bit more. Since I have the car up on a very steep angle, the remaining fluid in the pan is going to begin to drain out the back of the pan. Once you've gotten most of the fluid out of the pan, it no longer really matters which bolts you remove or in what order you remove them. The main concerns when removing a oil drain pan is that you remove all the bolts on one side of the pan at once without loosening the others. This may cause the pan to warp, as the weight of the fluid may cause the pan to bend slightly. This will be a big issue, and when you go to reinstall the pan, it may not seal. I'd like to briefly mention that when I removed the pan, to my surprise, there was no gasket or sealant between the pan and the rest of the transmission. I think the previous person that serviced this transmission probably forgot to reinstall a gasket, but you should have one. If I were to do this again, I'd probably consider putting down a very large cookie baking sheet type thing on the ground, as I spilled a lot of fluid on the ground. Now that we've got the pan out, we can begin cleaning the pan and the two round magnets that are stuck to the pan. I simply use some paper towel with no solvents or cleaners or anything like that. Be sure to pay special attention to the mating surface of the pan, that is the outer edge of the pan that is going to make contact with the transmission. It needs to be very clean to make sure that the pan seals with the transmission. I'd like to briefly mention that the gray stuff you see stuck to the paper towel is not transmission fluid, but rather it's small metallic particles that were stuck to the magnets. At this point in a transmission service, some people would recommend that you add additional new magnets to the transmission pan. That's not something you see me do here. I don't see a lot of value in that, but if you want to, now is a great time to do that. We're now going to remove the three 10mm bolts that hold the pan filter to the rest of the transmission. After removing this filter, be sure to check that the O-ring at the top of this filter on the tube that goes to the pump is still attached to the filter and not stuck in the transmission body. Here in this diagram, we can see that the bolts that hold on the pan filter should be tightened to 7.9 Newton meters, and the bolts that hold the pan on should be tighten to 5.9 Newton meters. Now we're going to install our new transmission pan filter. This is a very awkward position for me as my elbows are rested against the ground. That's why it's a little bit hard for me to get it in. We're going to tighten this to 7.9 Newton meters. And after this, we are going to clean our mating surface. That's the outer edge of the transmission that is going to touch our pan. Since the previous person that serviced this transmission didn't use any type of sealant, for me it's already very clean. In the video, you can see me use an SOS pad to clean this mating surface, but if the previous owner had used some type of liquid gasket maker such as RTV on the pan, you may need to use a scraper to remove that. Ideally, you would use a plastic scraper, as if you use a metal one and end up gouging this mating surface, you may end up with a leak in your transmission that's impossibly hard to repair. I would also like to mention that the only reason I'm really changing this filter is because I wanted to drop the pan to get the most fluid out of the transmission as possible. We are now ready to begin reinstalling our transmission pan. In this diagram, you can see the official order that you're supposed to torque the bolts down in. But in this diagram, you may also notice that essentially it's telling you to start from the middle and radiate outwards. This is because, as I mentioned previously, if you begin by tightening or loosening one side of the pan, you may bend the pan, which may prevent it from sealing with the transmission. I know it's a little bit hard to see here, but I'd like to mention that I have also placed my gasket on top of the pan, and it's currently sandwiched in between the pan and the transmission body. I'd like to put a lot of emphasis on the fact that it doesn't matter what order you start these bolts off in. What really matters is the order that you tighten them down in. As you can see in the video, I had to start a lot of these bolts off with a wrench and was unable to start them off by hand. This is because, as you can see in the video, most of these bolts have the ends of them exposed to the elements, and over time, the ends of the bolts have rusted. Now that we've got all the bolts loosely inserted, we're going to begin tightening them down using our torque wrench. These bolts all tighten to 5.9 Newton meters of torque. I recommend you follow the order in the diagram I have provided for you, even though I probably don't do so in this video. I'd also like to briefly mention that there's very little thread in the transmission that these bolts are going into. I'm sure if I had tried to use a wrench and not a torque wrench to tighten these bolts down, I would have certainly stripped a lot of these bolts. Alright, now we're going to remove our driver's side wheel so we can gain access to our auxiliary cartridge filter housing. I'd like to mention that there are a lot of different approaches to accessing this cartridge filter housing. Ideally, you'd want to remove the plastic wheel well liner to access the cartridge filter housing, but I'm much too lazy for that. Alternatively, I could have removed the battery and tried to access it from the top, or if I owned a hoist, I could have tried to access it from the bottom, but this is what works best for me. Alright, now with the wheel off, you can just barely see the auxiliary filter housing. It is just behind the wheel well liner. Ideally, I would remove the wheel well liner, but I am much too lazy. Also, I tried to remove some of the plastic clips, and they all kind of break because they're really old, and I don't have spares or the time to drill them out. The auxiliary cartridge filter housing is held on with a single 10mm bolt. The housing then rotates counterclockwise a quarter turn and can be pulled out. Once you remove the housing, be sure to check that the rubber O-ring is still attached to the housing. This O-ring has a much looser fit on the housing than I expected. I removed the filter and the housing separately as the filter is stuck on a tube still attached to the vehicle right now. The filter simply pulls off the tube it's attached to, but I'm too stupid to realize that for quite a few minutes. Here is a clear photo of what the auxiliary cartridge filter housing looks like. It's the cylindrical device in the center of this picture. Next to it's the transmission electrical connector, and the black tube to the left of that is the dipstick tube. As you can see, the filter housing has a single 10mm bolt, and then the top fin-looking device on the housing. When it is rotated, the fin-looking device rotates and the housing can be removed. The issue I was having when trying to do this blind is that I would over-rotate the housing by a couple of degrees, and that stupid fin would get stuck behind the electrical connector. And this took me like 20-30 minutes to figure out. Fortunately, my phone ran out of storage here, so I didn't record the rest of this, but essentially the new filter goes on the tube that's stuck to the transmission. A new O-ring is lubricated and placed on the housing we removed, and that housing is reinstalled and torqued down to 7 Newton meters as shown in this diagram. Reinstallation was definitely much easier than removal. We are now going to add new fluid into our transmission. We're going to start off by removing the dipstick as shown here. We're now going to use a funnel to add our new fluid in through the dipstick hole. I'm kind of using a specialty funnel with a tube that makes it a lot easier to do. I add exactly 4.35 liters of fluid to the transmission, as that's what I measured coming out of the transmission. If you're wondering why we don't just use the dipstick to determine the level of the fluid, I have attached the dipstick instructions here. As you can see, using the dipstick requires you first off to know the temperature of the transmission fluid. That's not something you can see without a specialized scan tool. Second off, it's a very high precision measurement. As you can see in the diagram, a change in temperature of like 5 degrees moves up a good chunk on the dipstick. There isn't really a lot of margin for error, and the thin new fluid you're adding is very hard to see on the dipstick. This CVT dipstick is nothing like an oil dipstick in this car. The oil dipstick has about a half liter of fluid between low and high. In this vehicle, the margin for error is basically non-existent. Even having the car on just a couple of degrees slight incline may throw off your dipstick measurement. That's why I don't even show you how to do it in this video. Here you can see all the metal fragments that came out of my transmission. This was a completely new container that I used, so anything seen here is from this transmission service. Here you can see the results of my transmission oil analysis. As I expected, my transmission is healthy. I knew it was going to be healthy because this vehicle comes with a very generous 10-year, 160,000 kilometer powertrain warranty from Mitsubishi. I'm sure they wouldn't be able to stand behind their product for 10 years if they didn't expect it to last at least 10 years. This marks the end of our video. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment below.